We're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Now, parallel lines are lines that do not cross. So as we see here, these lines actually have the same slopes. So if they have the same slope, that means they're never going to cross, because if they did, that means the slopes would have to be different. So if you have parallel lines, they always have the same slopes. Now, perpendicular lines, they cross at a 90-degree angle. Now, these have opposite reciprocal slopes. Now, what does that mean? Let's suppose that the slope of one line was 4/3 and you want the opposite reciprocal. Opposite reciprocal means that you're going to flip these numbers over and make it negative. So the other line would be -3/4 would be the slope. That would give you perpendicular lines if one line is 4/3 and the other one is -3/4. Okay, well, let's suppose that the first line had a slope of -2. Well, the opposite reciprocal for that one, you would flip it and make it positive. That means that the other line would have to have a slope of 1/2. So that's what we mean by opposite reciprocal. They're opposite signs, and reciprocal means that you have to flip them. Now, another way to tell if you have perpendicular line is if you multiply the slopes together, you should get -1. Now, if you do that multiply across the top here, -12/12, that's -1. Multiply across the top and bottom for this one, you would get -2/2. That's also -1. So that's another way you can tell if you have perpendicular lines. So continuing on that idea of opposite reciprocal slopes, we have to do that for this problem here. It says find the slope of a line that is perpendicular to this one. So now the slope of the original line is -4, and we can write that as -4/1. We want to find the opposite reciprocal slope, so you would just flip that over and make it opposite sign, which means if you flip it over, you get 1/4, we get rid of the minus sign, and so this would be the answer. That would be a slope of a line that would be perpendicular to the given line that originally had a slope of -4. Here's another one with parallel and perpendicular. We just want to determine if the following lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So the only way we can really do this is we have to put these into slope-intercept form, y = mx plus b form, and then we'll just compare the slopes and determine what it is to know whether they're parallel or perpendicular or not. Let's do the first one. Okay, now the first one, we want to solve for the y. To do that, I'm going to move the 3x across the equal sign, so it's going to become negative. Now the negative in front of the y, that's still got to stay there. I move the 3x across the equal sign, it's going to become negative. I still have the 12 over there, that's positive. Let's divide both sides now by -4. If I divide all those by -4, then I get y equals +3/4 x minus 3. So that's the slope of the first line. Now, let's go ahead and we'll do this one. Let's just do this one right down below here. So this one, let's just go ahead and go down like that. So for this one, same idea. We want to leave the y on one side, so I'm going to add 6x over to the other side. So I get 8y is equal to +6x plus 16. Now I want to divide everything by 8. And if I divide everything by 8, then I want to reduce that. 6 divided by 8 is 3/4. So I get 3/4 x plus 2. Now the way to tell whether they're parallel or perpendicular, you're only going to compare the slopes. It doesn't matter these y-intercepts in the end, you can ignore those. The fact that this and this match tells us that these lines are going to be parallel because the slopes are exactly the same. So if they are opposite reciprocal slopes, then we could say those lines are perpendicular. And let's say you had like 3/4 and -3/4, for instance, we'd say neither on that one. But in this case, they're both the same, so the answer would be parallel.